Hello, good evening, viewers. Welcome to our evening program, the Inner Voice Talk Show. I am Donald Okumbo, your host for today. With me, I have my co-host on my left-hand side, Nomode. You're welcome. Good to have you in the studio. And today we have a special guest, an educationist from Zimbabwe with the name Georgina Garawaziva. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you in the studio. We are really pleased to have you. And today we're going to be talking about education, basically, because that's your area of expertise. So how long have you been teaching in Zimbabwe? Tell us something we're supposed to know.
Okay. I've been teaching for the past, can say, 23 years, not only in Zimbabwe, but in other parts of Africa. But my teaching experience is about 23 years.
Wow, that's quite a long time. And education, I know Zimbabwe has the highest literacy rate in Africa, thanks to late Robert Mugabe.
Yes.
And in terms of education in Africa as a whole, what do you think we should be doing to improve the standard of education?
I should think probably if we talk about Zimbabwe and all other countries, the greater population is in the village, where we would call the rural areas. So children are not, there's no accessibility.
Okay.
Like there's no electricity.
So good roads as well.
There's no good roads. There's no running water. The distance that the children walk from home to the school, probably 5 kilometers away, and then 5 kilometers back.
Wow,
so
that's
we're
quite
talking
a long time.
of a child who wants to start grade 1 at 6 years old, but then they have to go to ECD, the early childhood development, at 4 years, then the second stage at 5 years, then start school at 6 years. So you are saying a child who's walking those distances when they're only maybe 4 or 5. So a parent would decide not to send their children early because it's too much of a distance for the child to walk. So they'll skip the first 2 stages and then they'll go straight into grade 1, which makes it difficult because they've jumped maybe 2 stages before they go to their primary education. So that is a very big challenge. And if our governments can really come in and sort that out, I should think it will make it better.
That's quite a...
Even the high school, those that want to do the science subjects, there's no electricity, there are no laboratories. They can't do an experiment because there's nothing to carry out the experiment with. So those are some of the things.
I can imagine, and that's very challenging for the teachers as well. I mean, teaching is a very, very critical job. You play a critical role in the lives of our children. And what's your passion about teaching? What do you like most? What makes you to decide to become a teacher?
Okay, I'm a primary school teacher, which means I'm the junior phase, probably from 6 to 12 years. So, getting a child who's a blank slate, doesn't know how to read, doesn't know how to write, doesn't know anything practically except the home education that they know and the home knowledge, coming to me and then seeing the child progress from 0 to 10, maybe from 0 to 5, then from 5 to 10, that's the greatest. Wow,
that's so encouraging. Wow, that's really, really good. So Nomode, do you have any question or contribution?
On this part also of seeing a child who is coming as a blank slate, I feel like for me, my teachers have given me so much confidence to where I stand in life right now. I'm so grateful for all the teachers that whose hands I've passed through. And how does it feel also to see a child who is not grasping how to read, who is not grasping how to write? Where does that come from? Does it mean that this child is actually dull? Does it mean that this child cannot develop? Or is it coming from a space of, I don't know, do you have an explanation for these children who are being super slow and the parents are being frustrated at home because they are receiving the reports of their children being slow?
In addition, in such situation, and you need a lot of patience, and that's what most people don't really have.
Really have,
a lot of patience. So how do you handle a situation like that?
Yeah, like from what you're saying about patience, it comes from that the parents are not patient with the children in the first place. The children get frustrated. Secondly, they lose their confidence.
Wow.
So when they come to school and you have a child who's slow, who's not moving on the same pace with the other children, you help them in their strength. But it doesn't mean that if they're not academically gifted or are not on the same level with their peers, it means they're dull. No, they're not. They've got their own speciality that you have to know. It can be a simple thing, just to ask them to carry books. Just them being able to go and take those books and come back to you and give you. You actually acknowledge that and make them feel good and proud. So from that stage, then you develop it slowly. So like what you said, you really need to be patient with them. Where is their strength? How do you develop them? What should you do? How do you speak to them? Because most of the time, you can just call them names, which happens. Because you're saying, you're too slow. It makes them much slower.
Slow, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you actually say, okay, next time, maybe if you can do it a bit faster, then that would be okay. So yeah, that's how you can deal with the children and help
interesting.
them.
So Millet, you want to add something?
I have one last point I could do to this. With my education, I remember this teacher who gave me a slap in the face. I still have the memory very vivid in my head. How do you feel about this? I also want you to give your own opinion and how we have to move in the future in how the teachers discipline the children in the schools.
Yeah, as a teacher, I think most teachers, although today in 21st century, most parents hardly accept the idea of teachers over disciplining their kids in school. And I think we've had, even myself, I've had some issues like that. But in the Western world, they are more kind of calm in terms of handling children. But I think disciplining a child, it shouldn't be a problem. So what's your take on that? Is your profession, how do you discipline kids in school? I mean, confrontation by hitting them or smacking them, is it allowed? Is there any law that goes against it?
Maybe you're going to know one day, there is no longer corporal punishment that is allowed in schools anymore.
Okay.
Schools, children are supposed to be, you don't discipline them in any form, like physical form. No slapping, no shouting, no screaming. Let them be children. Which makes it difficult for a teacher because you are in a classroom of probably over 60 pupils in a class. You don't have an assistant teacher. You're handling that whole class alone.
Wow.
So it's a bit on. It makes one emotional at times. So it has to be with the teacher to have self-control and discipline and control your emotions when it comes to that. But that is not allowed. That is not going on in any school. That children are allowed to be slapped or screamed at. So as a teacher. That's the difficult part about being a teacher. You know, we don't get that support that we should be getting from our governments because a lot of things are happening behind doors, and teaching is a calling, I should think. So you are there because you know that's what you only know, or that is you need to be there. If you walk out, you still come back in. And if that happens, usually teachers go to the side with the child and talk to the child and see what makes them have that behavior.
Interesting.
Was for a teacher to slap a child, maybe that would be too extreme, but there is no excuse for that.
Wow. Interesting. I mean, you said sometimes you do have up to 60 students in a classroom. Does it mean Zimbabwe you have inadequate teachers? What could be the result of that?
Not inadequate teachers, but probably less schools. So the government should build more schools.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm talking of distances of a child walking 10 kilometers.
That's quite a long time. Okay.
So if there were more schools that would be built, then it reduces.
Okay.
You know, because a child will just be walking maybe from here to there, there's a school, from there to there, there's a school. So the distances and
there's a problem. Wow, very good. Now it's getting clearer. These are two things. You have enough teachers, but not enough schools to accommodate the students. Wow.
There's actually a bigger number of teachers that don't even get placement soon after graduating because there are no schools to go to teach to. So because the schools are fewer, if only they could build more schools.
Particularly in rural areas.
Even in towns.
You also have inadequate schools.
It's the same thing. Because most parents are rushing to schools that provide probably a better education.
Okay.
Then you've got a school that is under-equipped. There are not enough books. There's not enough furniture.
But I learned that Robert Mugabe indeed invested massively in education. How come Zimbabwe is still grappling with these issues of inadequate schools, and how were you people in Zimbabwe able to become the most literate people in Africa despite the inadequate schools?
Then I should think the population as well was not as high as it is now.
Exactly, yeah. I can imagine.
The population is growing and growing and growing.
Yeah.
And as the population is growing, the infrastructure is not growing with the population. So the problem will still stand and will still stay.
I can imagine.
And when he was there, it could be one child per book. Now maybe it's 5-6 children.
Population, growth in population.
Yes.
And it also boils down to cost.
Yes.
How expensive is it in Zimbabwe to train a child in school?
So it has levels, and according to how people earn. So we've got government schools, we've got mission schools, we've got private schools. So government schools are the ones that are cheaper.
Okay.
Right? And then we've got mission schools that are almost, and then we've got private schools that are exorbitant. You can't afford to send your child to a private school. So education is not for free. You pay to educate your child.
And does the quality of education differ from if the child is at a government school, is it a public school, is it a private school?
Definitely. Because there are the facilities that you can find at a government or a mission school. Private schools offer horse riding, offer swimming, offer tennis. The core curricula is more, and that makes the child more exposed, and then the child is at a greater advantage. If they're not academically gifted, they've got somewhere where they can show their talent and be more progressive and in that department. So it is an advantage to send a child to a private school compared to a government school. You will just have the ordinary sports. Probably it will just end at school. You play football, you play netball. It ends there. It can't go
evolve the child.
So you're not academically gifted. You were good in sport. You played soccer at school. You failed your school. That's it for you.
Okay.
That's where it ends.
Wow, interesting. So, Ms. Garawaziva, it's been so interesting so far, so good. Now, if you want to send a message to the government of Zimbabwe, advising them on 3 typical things they should be doing to improve the academic standard in Zimbabwe, what would that be?
First and foremost, teachers should be paid.
Paid, okay?
Teachers.
I mean, the salaries are not encouraging.
They are not encouraging at all. They are not encouraging at all.
Which could be very demotivating.
It actually is.
Okay.
You know, so that's the number one thing. Pay your teachers. For them to be there to make those decisions and everything is because of
it's a very noble work that should be well paid.
Everyone comes from
Western world teachers are really well paid because they hold our future. They're the one training our kids.
Yes.
For us to hold this conversation, it's because somebody taught you on how to speak, on how to sit, and on how to think and express yourself and make yourself to be someone from a teacher. But teachers are the least respected people.
It's really sad.
I don't know if I can say anywhere in the world, but in Africa, yes.
In Africa, I can imagine.
So that's the number one. Secondly, maybe
building more schools.
And the infrastructure where teachers are supposed to be housed.
Wow.
Let's say I'm teaching in a rural area, but the house that I'm living in, I don't have water, I don't have
good
electricity.
accommodation. Wow.
Yeah, that's the second thing that I can say. And the third thing, probably accessibility to the roads, to clinics, to hospitals.
Yeah, and I also think what we were talking about earlier, that the parents also need to know that they play a very big
role as well
in the evolution of their child in their academics.
Yeah.
how a child is going to be performing at school is going to be 50% of what they are performing at home.
Yeah, exactly. It's very important, of course, that the child's education often begins from the home. And do you have sometimes challenges whereby some parents are not that cooperative and you find it very depressing? So what's your experience about that?
Yeah, like every parent wants the best from their child. Every parent thinks their child is very intelligent, you know, and every parent expects a lot from their child. So if a child comes to school and the parent does not recognize the role of the teacher, then there's a problem. So if you come to the teacher-parent meeting, a parent should let the teacher give out and say out what they think, not what they think, actually what they know about the child. Because I believe teachers know more of the children. Because they spend more time with the teacher than with the parent. So now we have working parents whenever available for their children. They don't even know their children.
I know.
Yeah. So
it's
the
really
parent comes, you try to talk to them, they'll try to argue, no, my child is not like that, no, my child is like this. But children show you what you want to see at home. They don't really show the true selves themselves to you in class. So it is a challenge. Because I'll tell you, your child is indisciplined in this, that, then you say, no, not my child. My child is not like that.
Wow, interesting. So how often do you meet the parents to discuss about the children's performances in school?
Usually it's done once a term.
Once a term, okay.
Once a term, yeah. So parents come in, they discuss with the teacher of their child, on the performance of the child, what needs to be done. So at times we don't really blame the child at school. It's more of the home background.
Okay.
There are so many absent parents who are not taking part fully in their child's upbringing and education. Like what's happening everywhere in the world. Parents are leaving their native country to go and work somewhere else and then leaving their children behind. So that child is actually kind of lost totally.
Wow.
You demand homework is not done. Why don't you do your homework? Because my parents came late. I had no one to help me with my homework.
It's really challenging.
So it's a very negative impact on the child.
Wow. There's one important question I really want to ask. In terms of most African countries, Nigeria in particular, they have been fighting with these problems of examination malpractices. How much of such problems do you have in Zimbabwe? I mean, students, getting someone else to write exams for them, certificates being forged to get a better position in the society. How much of these problems do you have in Zimbabwe?
In Zimbabwe, it's not much of someone writing an exam for someone or certificates being forged, but not that common. But a paper can leak. A paper can be leaked and it can be given to a student and students claim and sold for a certain amount and a friend gives a friend and a friend gives a friend. But it's not so much of a problem. It happens, but it's not frequent. Wow. So that problem it's not really there.
So corruption is entering our education system in this
because it never used to happen, but now it happens.
Okay. If I decide to become a teacher in Zimbabwe or preparing to become a teacher, what would you advise me to get well prepared for?
It's now expensive compared to the time when we went to college. We used to get student grants. The government used to give us grants. But I don't think it's there still anymore. There are no more grants. So you have to pay throughout for your own education. And a lot is required from you because you need to be typing assignments, you need to be printing assignments, you need to be researching, you need to be doing everything from your own pocket. No one is there to help you.
It's really challenging.
It is. And after you finish college, you're not guaranteed of getting a job because the government does not place teachers there and then. They have to apply and look for schools and look for jobs on their own. The government doesn't recruit anymore. So you can even have a year of not getting a job or 2 years soon after you finish college. So that's another thing, and also the placement. You can't get anything in the urban areas. You have to go to the rural areas where you walk after dropping off the bus. Then you walk 3 kilometers or 4 kilometers to go to your workplace, and you might not have electricity. You might not have water.
Wow.
Yeah, so
it's really challenging.
No, let's stop being sad, guys, because you know me. Let's end this on a more beautiful, on a more joyful, bright
yeah, definitely. And you're right. In Zimbabwe, do you have a kind of a union that speaks your mind or fight for your own interest, or inform the government what you really want? I mean, if you have one, how effective is it? Because it plays a lot of role, because all the teachers cannot be going to the government individually. You must have a strong union that should be able to tell the government the challenges you're going through.
Yeah, we do have.
So how effective is it?
They really try, but remember, it's a union and the government. Who's bigger than who here?
Yeah, I can imagine.
So no matter how much they try to stand in for the teachers, it's almost maybe a 10, 15 kind of a thing. So they can't get what they want. Because if they were getting what they want, there would not be any complaining of teachers' salaries and, you know, packages and the welfare of teachers generally. So the unions are there. They are trying really hard, but it's a brick wall. They can't break.
Wow.
So let me say this. I think we are work in progress. I think maybe we need to have these conversations also, that the teachers union, the government hears us and hears these complaints, that there is still so much work for us to do on what Robert Mugabe and all the other people have left. And we have to continue building more schools. We have to take care of our children's education. There's still more work to do. That's what we realize.
Wow, interesting. That's very good. Thanks for having you. Where we really appreciate. It was indeed a very interesting discussion. Normally, do you have, before we conclude, do you have any contribution?
I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you, teachers, for being there, for preparing us to be the people that we are. And yeah.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Garawaziva, and we hope to have you in our studio in the future again. Thank you for your contribution. We appreciate. Viewers, thank you for your time. We really appreciate, and we hope to see you soon again in the future. God bless. Bye.